Alrighty, we got a couple coming in here still. Give them just a second. Alrighty, awesome. We're going to get started. So welcome everyone to the College Fairs of Greater Denver. We're so excited to have you participating in this event. We have some fantastic folks here with us today. My name is Chelsea and I will be your facilitator. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. Your camera and microphone are off, so the panelists cannot see or hear you. You can use the Q&A button on your screen to type your questions to our presenters at any time. This presentation is being recorded and will be available at strivescan.com/Greater Denver. I'm now very excited to turn it over to our first panelist, and it would be Heather.
Great. Hi, everyone. Super excited to talk with you all. I'm going to go ahead and get our screen shared here so you can see our presentation. And we're going to start off with some really quick introductions so that you know who you're talking to and where we're coming from. Like I mentioned, my name is Heather Wofford. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Senior Assistant Director of Recruitment for Oregon State University, and I'm the Colorado advisor.
Hi, everybody. My name is Anders Groseth. I use he, his, him pronouns, and I work as the Associate Director for Recruitment at Montana State University. And I'm so glad to be able to spend some time with you all tonight and hopefully answer some questions that you all have.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrienne Loveland. I use she, her, hers, and I am the Assistant Director of Admissions for the University of Wyoming. So go Pokes.
All right. Great. So we have an awesome panel here today, and we're going to talk to you a lot about WUE and what it means to go out of state with this opportunity and clarify a lot of misconceptions and confusion that happen around the Western Undergraduate Exchange. And you'll hear from each of us about what our institutions look like when we're using WUE and just some general information as well. So as you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A and we'll be sure to answer those as we go and at the end in that Q&A function. So why go out of state? That's one of the things we talk a lot about with students is, what is the great thing about going out of state in general? A lot of universities are great within Colorado. So why maybe look at some of the out of state options? And some of the reasons why we suggest you might want to do that is because you might find that some of the out of state options have less impacted majors. They also might have specialized programs that you aren't able to find more locally. One great example is looking out on the coast because it has the ocean there, right? If you're really interested in ocean science, maybe you're going there, or maybe you want to do something that only one state really has a lot of access to. So definitely being able to look for those specialized majors and programs is a big benefit of going out of state. Also, affordability, there are opportunities through scholarships and financial aid that can make an out-of-state option actually quite affordable compared to some more local opportunities for institutions. So, being able to compare all your options and see what's going to make the most sense for you financially can be another great opportunity. Internships are another reason why we suggest maybe looking out of state is depending on your future career. An out-of-state college might have a really great internship connection to work with some companies that you'd be interested in working with professionally and just building awareness of other parts of the country, right? Jobs can take you all over the place. So having an opportunity to see those locations, put yourself out there and try something new, explore a new community can be great practice for when you're going out professionally to accept a job in another part of the country. And that really leads into that gaining independence, right? So taking a step away from home, learning a new place and being out on your own can definitely be a really great independence builder. So there's a lot of great reasons why we're excited for you to be checking in with us on your out-of-state options and hearing more about how to make that really affordable. So tonight we're going to go through a bunch of information about WUE, and WUE can actually be really confusing, right? And there's a lot of terms that get thrown around when you're just looking at college in general and thinking about like, what does this mean? What are they talking about? So we wanted to go through just a few options and terms that you hear about when you're talking with colleges to make sure that you feel more confident in those conversations and feel like you have all the information. So you'll hear things like reciprocity. That would be when you're going to another state and being able to pay in-state tuition, right? You're getting reciprocity with that institution, that other state. Residency revolves around your personal residency within the state. So if you're an in-state or an out-of-state student. Scholarship retention, being able to hold on to those scholarships over multiple years. Another big one we're seeing, especially during COVID, is test optional and test blind. So what does an institution mean when they say that they are test optional for admissions or scholarships, or test blind, right? What's the difference between the two? Is it that you really don't have to send them in, or is it that the school won't even look at them, right, if you send those in? So that is really relevant for admissions and scholarship purposes. Renewable scholarships, that's what we're talking about when a scholarship is something you hold on to multiple years without having to reapply, right? Something that you get to maintain for multiple terms at the institution. And super score is another one that we get a lot with scholarships. For those of you who are taking an SAT or an ACT, a lot of times you may take it more than once, and a super score is taking the highest in the individual sections for multiple tests and compiling them all into that one huge super score, right? Taking the best of each section from multiple sittings to create that kind of cherry-picked score. So those are some really common terms that you hear when you're talking with an admissions officer, but then also when you are looking at scholarship opportunities. We're not going to talk a lot about FAFSA tonight, but free application for federal student aid is how students can get need-based aid and aid for funding from the federal government, right? So those grants, loans, and work study. We do want to give you a reminder that FAFSA opens up on Friday. So just in a few days, definitely want to get that in early. It's really beneficial for multiple reasons. So be sure to submit that FAFSA as soon as you can. Okay. As you're starting to look for the, the right college fit, there's a lot of things that you can think about as you're narrowing down your options. And we always recommend start broad, really open yourself up to all the opportunities out there. Don't limit yourself, really think about all the different ways that a school might be the right fit for you, including things like academics, right? Do they have your major? Is it in a place that you could see yourself living for 4 years? Do they have the location and the size of institution that you would want to be at for multiple years? What kind of relationships can you build with the faculty, right? Are you working with them within the classes? What's the student faculty ratio? You also want to be thinking about outside of the classroom, right? What is there to do on the weekends? What types of clubs or organizations might you want to join? Or if they have certain opportunities that you've always been dreaming of doing, study abroad or research, right? Thinking about that really holistic view of an institution is really important in the college search. And of course, knowing about the admissions process and the cost is always a huge part of finding the school that's the right fit for you, which really brings us to why we're here today, is to talk about WUE and a way to make college more affordable going out of state. So I'm going to pass it over to Anders, and he's going to go over some more information specifically about what WUE is to help you get a base education around this opportunity.
All right, nice job, Heather. Thank you so much. So for the students and the parents and families out there, you hear a lot about the do's and don'ts during a college search. And so what this slide really talks about is the is and is nots of WUE specifically. So when we're talking about the Western Undergraduate Exchange program, there's just a lot of vagueness to it. There's a lot of inconsistencies, which lead to a lot of questions. And so that's what really this presentation, this panel is all about. So some of the things that WUE is, it's the Western Interstate Commission of Higher Education, or WICHE. And that's an acronym that you'll hear thrown around a lot between admissions counselors and admissions officers that you'll interact with. What WUE provides a student who qualifies is the ability to pay 150% of that state's in-state tuition rather than the out-of-state tuition that you would pay if you're coming in as a non-resident student. It's available for post-secondary education institutions that are offering both 2-year and 4-year educations, degrees, and certificates. Now, getting into what it is not, it doesn't allow you to pay in-state tuition. If you reference that piece on the other side, you're paying 150% of the in-state tuition rather than in-state tuition flatly. It's not guaranteed. And that's one thing that I think when I mentioned the word inconsistencies earlier, There are some schools who, if you just come from the right state, if you come from a WUE state, you're guaranteed WUE, but that's not the case with everybody. And so never make that assumption. Never make that assumption when you're going through this college search that, well, they're a WUE school, I'm definitely going to get it there, because every school handles and manages their WUE process a little bit differently. The other thing that Heather was talking about earlier is reciprocity. Reciprocity is, in the state of Montana, we hear it a lot from our neighbors from the Dakotas, asking if they have reciprocity, which would let them pay in-state tuition. And that's not the case. There are some schools in some states that do participate in reciprocity, but that's something entirely different from the Western Undergraduate Exchange program. Automatic. I kind of use this in the same vein as what I was talking about with it being guaranteed earlier. It's not automatic at every different school. There's different qualifiers, there are different processes, and we'll kind of talk about those differences when we get to each of our institution slides later in the presentation. It's not always available for every major, and that's something that catches some students off guard as well. And so some schools have WUE is available, but only for these majors, or more specifically, or more often, not for these majors. And so you'll always want to ask that question as you're engaging with admissions officers and admissions counselors that you have a chance to email or meet at a college fair, is ask them, do you have WUE and are there any restricted majors? Because that can be a big deciding factor in the final goal of your college search. Residency, when Heather was talking about residency earlier, it sort of provides you what reciprocity would, the ability to pay in-state tuition, but residency, as she mentioned, does have an impact on your actual personal state's residency. So are you paying taxes there? Are you, does your driver's license come from there, or whatever the state requirements may be? That's not Western Undergraduate Exchange. And then it's not eligible at every school within WUE states. It's not always eligible at private schools. It's also not eligible at every public school that you might end up looking at, depending on what institutions you have on your list of colleges that you're considering throughout your search. So who is a part of WUE? So obviously coming from the states of Colorado, this is a big deciding factor. This is an engaging opportunity. But everybody who's available for the Western Undergraduate Exchange program, the way that I tell students, it's essentially the Dakotas West. And so that's that Western Interstate Commission on Higher Education, or WICHE, that we were talking about earlier. That is a coalition of all of the Western states of the United States to kind of help making going to school in the West, keeping students in the West who are from the West, essentially. So you can see those states listed out. And at most of our institutions, I would assume that all of our institutions, in regards to the panelists tonight, have these states listed out specifically on their WUE pages. Now, what WUE is in terms of what it does for you, I mentioned this earlier. You're paying 150% of that state's in-state tuition. So I'm going to use Montana as an example, since I'm coming from Montana State University. So if you're a student coming from Colorado and you qualify for our WUE program, you're going to pay 150% of Montana's in-state tuition rather than our out-of-state tuition. And I'll talk about this a little bit when I get to my slide, but essentially the way that our numbers break down, that breaks down to roughly half of out-of-state tuition. So WUE does tend to be a pretty massive scholarship at schools that participate across the country or across these Western United States. And so as an example, Heather, if you want to hit the next slide. Now, for those of you out there, I was a liberal arts major, so I wrote out my answer to this. But if we have an in-state tuition of $12,000 per year, and as a WUE student, you're going to pay 150% of that, you can break it down exactly like that. 12,000 times 1.5 equals $18,000 per year, and that would be your WUE rate. So again, it doesn't take you down with that in-state tuition or that reciprocity rate, but it takes you to that middle ground of paying half in between in-state and out-of-state tuition, essentially. Now, applying for WUE, that is going to be hugely dependent. As I was saying earlier, there are some schools out there that it is sort of an automatic process. If you come from a WUE state, that school will grant WUE to those students. Other states have those restricted majors, and then other states will kind of be in the middle and use it as a merit-based scholarship. And so that is a question that, again, I always encourage students to ask. Write that down in your notebook, send that email out, give that phone call, and say, if you participate in the Western Undergraduate Exchange program, how do I, as a student, take part in that? And so at some schools, there is an application process. Some schools have it as a strictly merit-based scholarship based on the numbers on paper, your GPA, if schools are still considering test scores, anything else along those lines. But that's the best first step that you can take as a student, is just to ask the question of, do you have a application process? Is there any dates or deadlines that I need to be aware of? And how can I make sure that I'm putting myself in the best position possible to qualify for the Western Undergrad Exchange program at the schools that I'm considering? And then Heather, if you want to hit the next slide. So I'm going to lead it right into my own institution, Montana State University. At Montana State University, we do require a separate application. We open the application for the Western Undergraduate Exchange program in early October each year. This year it's going to open in the first week of October. And we have a hard set deadline of the first day of the calendar year of your senior year. So January 1st, for those of you seniors that are out there. And on this application, part of what we look at is your academic credentials. Montana State University, starting in 2021, is a test optional school. So we are not considering test scores for scholarship qualifications. However, when we're looking at your GPA, the other part of what we want to look at is, who are you as an individual? So was it involvement with student government or music programs, or having that job outside of school, being involved with community service or volunteer work? There's an application that you'll fill out that you sort of get to brag about yourself and really supplement those numbers on paper. At Montana State University, it is a competitive scholarship. We are probably going to be offering somewhere in the ballpark of around 500 WUE programs next year, or WUE spots next year, I should say. And so last year, our scholarship parameters indicated that students from a Western undergrad state, so again, those Dakotas West, who had a 3.5 GPA or higher and had submitted their application by that date of January 1st, they qualified for the WUE program. As you can see in the very bottom bullet point of my slide right there, we are still in the process of establishing our final scholarship parameters for the fall of 2022, and that's normal for us. So for those of you students out there who might have already applied and been accepted, you might have been wondering, why didn't I hear about a scholarship yet? That's normal for us. You will be hearing about scholarships in early October. And we do have an automated scholarship program called the Achievement Awards. That's what you'll hear about first. And then the next piece of the puzzle will be applying for the WUE application for that deadline of January 1st of your senior year. And that's it from me. I'm going to hand it back off and we'll be able to answer some questions. I see some questions being asked in the Q&A as well, so I'll dive in on those. So I appreciate your time, everybody. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Anders. So I want to talk a little bit about how it works at Oregon State University. And in some ways, we're similar to how MSU does it. In some ways, we're very different. So that's why we have different institutions here today. So you can kind of compare and see how we can differ between institutions. So for Oregon State University, scholarships really happen in two different rounds. The first round is associated with our admissions application. So when students apply, as long as they apply by our February 1st deadline, they're automatically going to get considered for some scholarships, right? So we will take their admissions application, send it to our scholarship office, and the scholarship office will review the admissions application for scholarships. And one of those is the Western Undergraduate Exchange, is WUE. So when a student from an eligible WUE state applies to Oregon State, our scholarship office will review them for WUE first. So that will be the initial award that they are considered for. They're going to do a holistic review based off the admissions application, and they will select the recipients from that information. Although you're automatically considered at Oregon State based on admissions, it's not automatically awarded for all those students. So it is a very competitive scholarship. It is actually our most competitive non-resident award. So not all students who apply to Oregon State are going to receive WUE, but the nice thing is that you don't have to do anything in particular to say that you're interested in it, right? You just apply for admissions, and it doesn't matter what major you are or anything like that. We will automatically consider you for that scholarship. If a student is not selected for WUE, they would then be considered for other admissions-based awards, such as the Provost Scholarship, which is also based off of the admissions application. So around the time a student is admitted to OSU or shortly after, they generally hear about any admissions-based scholarships that they might have been selected for. The second round of scholarships for Oregon State really happens after a student is accepted to OSU. They've already applied, they've been admitted, they get access to what we call Scholar Dollars, which is our one-stop shop really for scholarships with Oregon State. And it would allow you to apply to any other awards at OSU that were not part of the admissions process, right? So within Scholar Dollars, you can apply to academic department scholarships and all of those specifically from that system. And anything that a student gets from Scholar Dollars could get stacked on top of the Western Undergraduate Exchange or a different admissions scholarship. So that's how students can really add to that. Their scholarship profile is by using Scholar Dollars. So WUE, big things to take away for Oregon State. You don't have to apply separately. It's open to all majors, but it is very competitive. And students would be notified around the time they're admitted or shortly after. So I will also check for the Q&A, and I'm going to pass it off to Adrienne to talk about Wyoming.
Great. Thanks, Heather. So at the University of Wyoming, we try to make it a kind of a one-stop shop. So for our WUE, we will use your application for admission. And at Wyoming, we are a test optional school for some scholarships and admission, but for the WUE, we do need a test score. You have until May 1st to get this test score to us because we know getting a test site can be difficult. You want to take it multiple times, and we respect that. So know that even after you apply and you can finally get a test site, you get the score you want, you can submit that to us after we've already done an award for you. So WUE, there is nothing else you need to do. We do not have any major restrictions on that scholarship. The only thing is like my colleagues, it is a pretty competitive scholarship with us. So again, you'll need a GPA, an unweighted GPA, and a test score to qualify for WUE. If you don't qualify for WUE, please know that that's not it. We do have other scholarships, specifically our Brown and Gold commitment. With the Brown and Gold, it is based off of your unweighted GPA, and we have a really great graph on our website that you can go to, and it's sort of a hybrid. You look at your test score, you scoot over on a graph, and it'll show you the specific amount that you're going to get in the Brown and Gold amount. And this, again, you don't need a test score for. We can go test optional. But say you do have a test score and that benefits you more, it gets you more money than with going without, we will do whatever benefits you the most. So we will look at it holistically and make sure that we give you the best award possible. And again, if things change, your grades go up, you're able to get another test score after you applied, we will reevaluate and give you a different amount if it's applicable. We're a rolling admission school, so you can continuously apply. So apply when you're ready. Definitely contact us if you have real specific questions on those different scholarship options and let us know how we can help. We're happy to do so. Those are stackable with any external scholarships you may receive. And of course, the FAFSA that Heather was talking about that opens on Friday, it's stackable with those as well. So that's how it works at the University of Wyoming. So moving on a little bit, we've talked a little bit about the WUE. We've kind of talked about how it works at our school, but know that there is financial aid available out there. There are academic scholarships, so those things that are going to look at your grades and your test score, and even through your department that you might be applying to at the institution you're looking at. Good question to ask is, are those available? How do you apply for those? Some are through your application, some will need a separate application or additional steps that you will need to take to get them. So make sure you ask that early, because sometimes, although the admissions office may not have a lot of deadlines, some of those colleges may have specific deadlines. Of course, there's always private scholarships, and what this means is it might be through a place of employment, it may be a church, it may be a philanthropic organization you're a part of, Boys and Girls Club, whatever it may be, whatever you're involved in, ask and see if they have scholarships. Parents, see if where you work, if they offer scholarships, and maybe they have a match thing. If a student gets so many dollars, they can get a match. Also in Colorado, it's really great because a lot of the cities or police departments will have scholarships for students. So look into that. There are lots and lots of places to look, but it is going to take time. So the earlier you start, the better off this is going to be. You don't want to be doing this on a weekend and kind of everybody on a computer rushing through it looking for scholarships. Also, don't forget to utilize your counseling office. So many of the counselors and post-grad coordinators in your high schools can say, hey, we've got this list of all these different scholarships that have come to our high school for our students to apply to. It can be women's groups such as PEO chapters, Rotary, VOAs. There's a lot of different opportunities for you to apply to scholarships. So ask them as well for some guidance. There are some scholarship search engines out there, but please be careful. There are the scammy ones too. If it ever asks you to pay for a scholarship, run away from that, delete it, get away from it. You should never, ever, ever pay for the FAFSA, because free is in the title, or a scholarship. Sometimes like, if you pay me $100, I'll get you $500. That doesn't even make economical sense. So never pay for a scholarship. Again, there are some that are really credible. Your counselors can give you some of those. We can help you with some of those. We can go on and on about that, but there are some that are credible. Just be wary. And of course, state and local scholarships, I kind of talked about that, but just look and pursue those because sometimes they go unawarded. And that's always hard for admissions to hear, is that they had unawarded scholarships. As Heather mentioned, the FAFSA is going to open up on October 1st, which is Friday. And the early worm gets the bird, the early bird gets the worm. If you get that FAFSA in, the pot of money is really good at the beginning and it starts to dwindle a little bit. We hear so often that students say, I'm not going to qualify for anything. I'm not going to fill it out. You never know. There might be a subsidized loan or unsubsidized loan that helps make the difference in your college search. So it's worth looking into and seeing what you get. You never have to accept that money if you feel like it's not needed, but it's nice to have that back in your pocket if it is necessary. Do check into the deadlines from schools. Some vary, some don't have them, some do. February 1st is a big deadline amongst schools, so make sure that you're asking because you do not want to miss that deadline when the FAFSA is needed. So we've kind of given you a lot of information, and so now it's kind of a quiz time. So we've talked to you a lot about WUE and some things, so I'm just going to go through and remind you some really big points that we've tried to make throughout this presentation. So with WUE, is it stackable? And it depends. You are going to hear that so often from schools. We are really experts on our own school, but everybody is just a little bit different. So you want to ask, can you stack other scholarships on the WUE, or is that all you're going to get? And the answer will vary amongst the schools, but it's an important question to ask, because if you do get rid of the WUE and then you get all these other scholarships, you want to make sure you can utilize all that free money. So it depends. Do I need to apply for WUE? Anders talked about this a little bit. I just talked about it. It depends. Every institution is a little different. Some are your application for admission. Some you just see that they're from a WUE state and we're going to get you the WUE. Some you may have to submit an essay or you may have to submit extra work for it. So you want to do your research on that, especially if it has a deadline, because in college admissions, there really isn't a gray area on those admission deadlines. It's pretty standard. You got to get it in by then. So there again, like Anders talked about, there is not just one application you fill out for all the WUE programs across the country. It varies amongst the schools. So please do your research on that. And can I use WUE for a graduate program? We haven't touched on this too much, but we get a lot of students that ask about this, and it does depend. Traditionally, not as often can you use it for a grad program. There are some of those schools that may have a 3+1 program where you do an undergrad and a graduate program in that combined 4 years. And that at that institution, the WUE may be applicable. There can be some programs that are similar to WUE for graduate students but they cannot call it WUE. So you want to definitely do your research on that. And if that's something you're really interested in or want to pursue, make sure you ask the question about the graduate program discounts. And what are the requirements for WUE? As you saw with just Oregon State, Montana State, and Wyoming, we all vary. So it's hard to just pinpoint that because you're from a WUE state, you get it. That is the number one thing. You have to be from a WUE state to qualify for WUE, but every institution is going to have their own requirements, their major requirements, etc. So the more research that you're able to do, the better. So please look for that and definitely start paying attention to what you need to do to apply for those WUE scholarships. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Heather.
Great. Thanks, Adrian. So we're almost at the end here, just a few more slides and we'll finish answering your questions. So to kind of continue our quiz, is WUE renewable? So yes, WUE is renewable. That means, you know, you could keep it at the institution for 4 years, right? So you start at Montana State and you are going to spend 4 years there. You can maintain your WUE throughout that time, but you need to talk with the institution to find out what types of requirements they have to maintain that over those 4 years. Most institutions will have a certain GPA requirement or a certain number of credits that you have to complete every year to be eligible to apply that WUE scholarship to your financial aid. So that's something that you would want to talk with each institution about, is what are the requirements to maintain that scholarship for those 4 years. WUE is not something that you use over the summer though. So that is something to know. It really is just for that primary academic year that you would be attending. So for fall, for semester schools, fall and spring, right? For those that are on a term or quarter base, usually that fall, winter, spring. So that is definitely something to know as well. All right. Does WUE change my residency? It depends. Just kidding. It does not change residency. That is one of the answers we know for sure that applies, you know, for the different states, is that it doesn't automatically change your residency by becoming a WUE student, right? You don't get the WUE scholarship and automatically become an in-state resident at that institution. If you are someone who is considering gaining residency at an institution, you do need to talk with those schools because the state really mandates how residency works. So if you do want to become an in-state student, you want to become a resident of that state, you do need to go through the official procedure in order to change your residency. And that also varies state by state. All right, congratulations. We're towards the end here. Keep sending those questions.
Okay, that's me. You guys, during the Heather's part of the presentation, I had to run away because my computer was dying. I didn't have my power cord in here, but I'm back now. So more information on WUE, you can visit the website that is up on the screen right now, which is the witchy.edu website. And this kind of breaks down from a very high level everything that the Western Undergraduate Exchange program provides students. Again, as we've said, there are so many dependencies with each different school, not just with the 3 schools that are presenting this evening, but with each and every school that you all have on your lists that might be participating in the Western undergrad program. Every single one of them has their little quirks in terms of how it's awarded, how it's maintained, how you qualify for it. So this witchy.edu/WUE website will give you the basics. It'll give you this basic structure of an understanding of things. But again, as I was saying, as you've heard each of our panelists say tonight, the best thing that you can do is ask those questions. Get in touch with admissions offices, get in touch with offices of financial aid at the schools that you're considering to make sure that you're hearing it directly from the source so that nothing comes up that ends up kind of putting a sour taste in your mouth of, oh, I thought I would qualify for this at this school and now I don't. Just make sure that you're hearing that from the institution specifically. So. And then again, we just want to say thank you so much for your time. We hope that this has been valuable for you. We know that we don't have the answers to every single question. We're only representatives of 3 institutions, but we hope that the base information that we've been able to provide has been helpful in terms of kind of getting your wheels moving in the right directions. And even if it just helps you identify a question that you should ask at those college visits that you might be doing, or when you're writing those emails, we hope that this helps. There's a lot of legwork to do on your end of things, and we're here to help as well. And I can speak not just on behalf of the three panelists that you have here this evening, but really on behalf of admissions professionals. These presentations, the questions that you have, and that's why we do what we do. We want to be in your corner, and we want to make sure that at any given point we can help guide you through whatever part of the college search process that you're in. So what you see up on the screen right here is our contact information, and I'm actually about to send mine through in the chat as well. And I hope that my colleagues will do the same. I want to be available for you. And so honestly, if there are things that, so I've just put mine in the chat there. If there are questions that you have, if there are things that you want to know, whether it's about WUE or about life on campus or other scholarship opportunities at Montana State University, as I just mentioned, I'm in your corner. So give me a shout, shoot me an email, give me a phone call, and I'll be more than happy to help out in any way that I can. So, and then I'll kind of kick it back to, well, I'll at least pose the question to Heather. We have a couple of questions that are coming in. Do we want to kind of dive into those one by one, or do we want to kind of wait and see who else has things to write in?
Yeah, let's get into the questions that are there. And just a reminder to everyone, have a little bit of time left. So if you have some questions, this is a great time to get it answered right now. So drop them in the Q&A and we'll be going through those live right now.
And actually, I want to pose a question, and Chelsea, who's our facilitator, I actually want to ask this question to you because it did come up in the Q&A. I know our presentation is being recorded this evening. Does everybody who registered for this evening get a link to the recording of it? There she is.
Hi there. Yeah, so actually all of the recordings are going to be uploaded to strivescan.com/ I believe it's Denver. I'll double check that, but yeah, everything, I'll put it in the chat as well. But everything, all the recordings for all the sessions, if you didn't see one or saw one and want more information, it'll all be there.
Thank you.
I wanted to add one more point. I was thinking, there's a lot of rumors out there. We were kind of doing the quiz and debunking a few of them. But there, your neighbor's best friend's hairdresser may have told you about how their child got WUE and what happened. There can be some big changes at a school from year to year. So although, yes, they're probably a WUE school and they probably had it, it could have changed the requirements. They may end up having a major restriction. They may add nursing to that or something really big. So although, yes, you can nod and smile and appreciate the advice, I just want to reiterate what Andrew said. Please check. Please check with the admissions office because things do change. And Heather mentioned this, it's a really hard conversation to have later on when you make an assumption without asking us and you're making a decision off that. So we can't say it enough. We're here and happy to help. Just let us know what we can do.
Yeah, Adrian, thank you so much for that. And I'll use my own institution as a great example of exactly what you just said. When we went test score optional, that's the first time we ever required an application for WUE. We used to award WUE based off of a student's ACT or SAT test scores. And then when we went test optional, obviously we couldn't do that anymore. So just last year is the first year that we ever required an application for it. So perfect example. Thank you for bringing that up.
If I could just offer a piece of advice, Anders, for everyone as well. As you saw today, so many things just depend on the institution. Really, if you're looking at schools in the Western US, I would recommend creating a specific WUE guide sheet for yourself as you talk with a representative, right? Create an Excel, create a Google sheet, have the institution's information, the contact person that you're talking with, and then ask them specifically, do you participate in WUE? Because not every school in the Western US, even if they were eligible to participate, is going to opt into participating in WUE, right? So not every university in the state of Oregon participates in WUE even, right? So the first question you really need to ask them is, do you participate in this program? And if they do, the second question really should be, how do I be considered and what restrictions are there? And those are the types of things that you really want to make sure you're taking note of, because it does change year by year. It varies so much by institution, and it can get really overwhelming. It can get confusing when there are so many different schools you might be considering. And so keeping that little bit of an organization is really the best way to make sure that you're not, gonna get that kind of heartbreak later, or accidentally confuse two schools and think you're in one track and not in another. And that actually happened to one of the students I worked with this year. Is she mixed up another institution for Oregon State and thought that she had been awarded WUE and then was very disappointed, right? So that would be something that you definitely want to make sure you're tracking early and staying on top of, and just contact us with those questions.
And
All right,
one
folks.
more piece. Oh, sorry, Anders.
Oh, go for it.
Oh yeah. We kind of touched on this. At some institutions, you do need to maintain a specific GPA or an academic good standing at the institution to keep that scholarship. We know it's a tough transition. There's so many studies out there that talk about the transition from 8th to 9th grade and from high school to college as being the two toughest transitions a student will go through. So if they do have an academic requirement, not that you want to be like, so what happens if I don't get it? What happens then? But you also want to know your options. Can you appeal it? Can you talk to financial aid? Is it a semester GPA or is it an entire year? And talk to your advisor at the institution. Say, I got to keep this scholarship. I want a maintainable schedule where I can have time to study. If you're going to work, good work-life balance, so that you can keep that scholarship. It's a really tough period and conversation to have with the student if you have to pull it. So ask about that. Same with, as high school students, when we award you these scholarships, we provisionally award these to you, meaning that we are assuming that you are going to graduate high school. We believe in you, you will graduate, and also maintain the requirements, AKA your GPA, that is necessary to keep this scholarship. Not every school is going to go back through your final transcript with a fine-tooth comb, but there have been institutions that if you decide that second semester of your senior year to just not go to class and not care, when we see you met it to get that scholarship in your first semester and second semester when we get that transcript, it can be a little alarming, and these scholarships can be rescinded. So keep up the good work. Don't let senioritis totally take over. We know, we've all been there, but just keep going and keep working hard, because we really do want you to keep these. We're your best advocates because we want you to graduate in 4 years. We want you to do great things. But just know that there are some little details with WUE as well.
Any last questions from anyone out there? You have 3 seasoned professionals at your fingertips. We're here for you. Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions. I suppose I'll just say, I know I already said this, but I'll reiterate it. Thank you all for giving up some of your evenings to spend with us. Thank you for your time and your attention. I hope to keep in touch with those of you who are interested in Montana State University. And honestly, if you're not interested in Montana State University, but you have questions that came from tonight's presentation, we're here for you. That's, again, why we do what we do. So sincerely, thank you so much for your time this evening and your investment in this process. And we'll hopefully keep in touch down the line. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to do a quick wrap up here. I'm going to stop the other sharing and bring that up. Okay, perfect. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you panelists. This was a wonderful presentation. Everyone, when you close this window, there will be a quick 5-question survey. If you don't mind filling that out, we'd appreciate any feedback you can provide. You'll be able to once again find this session's recording as well as other sessions recordings at scribescan.com/Greater Denver. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great evening.